Welcome back to Music Monday. That's right, y'all. The SOR Hands chapter continues. For those of y'all who don't know, there is a swirling guitar YouTube vortex happening right now, at the center of which is SOR Hands, our very own classical guitarist Sardonic Heel. A few weeks ago, he roasted me and my guitar playing in what was a thinly veiled free guitar lesson. Well, now we're a few reactions deep. And before you ask, yes, I am gonna play CRAZIER 7 at the end of this video. Without further ado, let's jump into this battle of wits. We're gonna talk about self-taught versus not. We're gonna talk about Cameron's tips, and then I'm gonna play.
Hey, this is Cameron, and welcome to the reaction log. Whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, we got a special spicy one here for you. Dude, 10,000 views in 2 days. That's like a decent performing video right there. I'd be happy with that. Oh my god, dude. I think he went up like 400 subscribers in a couple of days, too. I know that feeling all too well. It's weird. You get this like adrenaline rush from it and stuff. Yeah, dude, that's good stuff. All right.
Okay, I gotta talk about this for a second because, y'all, I wish I could say I've been playing it cool, but I've kind of been wigging out for this last week. Let me just say, thank you, Cameron, for the cosign. Thank you to everyone who flooded into my comments onto my channel. It's really exciting, and it's also kind of confusing and freaky, but I love music, and I love discussing music, and I love connecting with people, and there's been so much of that going on over the last week. To keep it real, I'm kind of in a weird phase of my life. I have been reevaluating my life direction and my sources of income. This space was always just a creative outlet for me. It was never something I considered as a serious lane. But this last week, right during this time, I don't know, it feels like a nudge. All of this could go away tomorrow and I'd still be stoked about it. But I thought, you know what? Screw it. Let's make a Patreon. It can't hurt, right? I might as well see what the universe thinks of me and my art. I'm thinking I'll upload some behind the scenes stuff over there, and because I have so many different interests, I'll probably get some help deciding what to make my videos about week to week. Anyway, no more plugs. Let's keep watching.
So I reacted to your video, and I basically gave you a YouTube reaction guitar lesson. And it seems like you listened to a lot of what I said. You also, threw some of it out, which is fine, because that's kind of the point of a guitar lesson. You don't necessarily need to follow everything that the teacher says. But usually what's talked about in a lesson is something that can be improved, because it's like a lower point of the performance that you had, and you give it some thought. And it seems like you did that. So let's actually go over the thought that you gave it. Before we jump into it, let me go ahead and introduce myself. I am a classical guitarist here on YouTube. And what does it mean to be a YouTube classical guitarist? It means that the only lessons you actually give are reaction videos.
Okay, before we jump into it, let me just introduce myself really quick. I am a self-taught musician here on YouTube. I'm a singer-songwriter, rapper, producer, game sound design developer, and a ton of other things.
Mainly want to focus on the ending of it, where he actually performs. That's why I'm here. I want to just, see what he worked on, maybe see what needs more work still. I assume that that's welcome, because, my face is on it and stuff. So I'm sure he saw this coming, so, more work to be done. And
let's let the clickbait speak for itself.
Actually, just watching it a little bit, the whole beginning is on the idea of being a self-taught guitarist, and I just want to touch upon that and maybe edit some of the things that I said. The whole self-taught meme that's been kind of a thing on the channel for a while, it all stemmed from Jacob Collier and that one Adam Neely video where he reviewed that woman who is self-taught, but she's playing insane stuff on guitar and was also around professional musicians. Apparently, that's what I remember from the video. And it's just a funny line that we draw between self-taught and being someone like me, someone who is like a student, and I would never claim to be self-taught. I make fun of it because I feel like there's this notion of being self-taught that's like a point of pride for people, or someone would actually refuse lessons because they don't want to lose their self-taught status. And I just want to point out how silly that is. And just to give you an example, what does my non-self-taught guitar journey look like? Well, I show up to my guitar lessons every week at a university. I'm in grad school, by the way. I play for my guitar teacher. He tells me why I'm not playing very well, and then I go home and I work on those things that he says, and then I come back and then he tells me more things why I'm not playing very well. He doesn't do the work for me, I have to go home and listen to what he says and decide if it's worth practicing these things or not. And even though I have instruction, I'm still paving my path forward, and I'm more just inspired in every lesson to keep paving, and usually paving in the way that he suggests. So with that, it's am I self-taught? I would say no, obviously, and anybody in my situation would say no. Now say that you had some document that was talking about phrasing and then you apply it to the Bach that you're working on. Are you self-taught then? Because you're following instructions from a document and then applying it to your music. I feel like people look at that and say like, oh yeah, I am self-taught. And I don't know, it just doesn't really make sense to me. Then someone like Leo, for example, doesn't have regular lessons, but will occasionally attend a lesson where someone like me will just give him these things to improve, and then he goes and improves them. Is he self-taught? Like, I don't know, if you want to call yourself self-taught, that's fine. The main thing that I don't want is for people to have pride around being self-taught, because there's nothing wrong, and in fact it is necessary to ask for help and guidance from other people who might know more about the subject than you. And it seems like the whole self-taught thing comes up a lot in music, and even specifically in guitar, and I think because guitar is like a folky instrument, it's sort of the quintessential folk instrument. So a lot of people learn it without a formal teacher, just like they pull some documents online and they just learn stuff or videos. And it becomes this point of pride for them where like, oh yeah, I learned all this on my own. And I just want to fight that as much as I can, because like, especially in pop culture, like any person who's trying to seem cool, they're always self-taught. And if you do have the opportunity to learn from someone, you absolutely should. It will never hurt you. It'll never take away from your music. It'll only add, because knowledge is power.
Okay, we got to talk about the self-taught stuff a little bit. The first thing I want to say, very important, never accept a lesson. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. There's one big point I really want to stress that I agree with here, which is that having a good music teacher is one of the most beautiful things. I'm so grateful for the music teachers that I have had, several guitar teachers. They're a source of inspiration and knowledge, and if it's possible for you, I'd highly recommend it. But there's a few things that I must refute. The first point is that having a teacher unilaterally will always be a good thing for you. The number of people I've known, particularly with pedagogical backgrounds, who've had scarring experiences and then have had to take extended or even permanent absences, it's high. Also, I want to push back on this idea that it's not good to be proud of being self-taught. Certainly, I wouldn't go so far as to refusing a lesson. Is that really a thing? I feel like that's kind of a caricature of a self-taught musician, right? Like, no, I won't accept free lessons. I have to stay self-taught. I don't think there's that many people that are actually like that. I do feel like there are a lot of people that think, man, I have not had the same opportunity or privilege as other musicians, and I've still attained some level of mastery or some type of meaningful relationship with music. And I say, hell yeah, be proud of that. Music so often is a voice for oppressed populations and groups of people who do not have the tools or the resources to go to music school. And for that to be a source of pride in your relationship with music, I don't think that's bad. Now, again, that's different than this pop culture posturing self-taught status that maybe people try to use, or maybe that people cling to in an unhealthy way. I think that's maybe even the character that I'm trying to ironically portray. And to that point, maybe I'm not a self-taught guitarist. I've had a number of guitar lessons. Hell, I might accept a masterclass on Carcassi 7 from John Crossley's conservatory level teacher. I'm a little scared about that. I also might take some lessons with Ben Levin this year, and as Sorhans has pointed out, I'm receiving lessons from him right now. But I also have developed a meaningful relationship with singing, lyric writing, production, and various other musical things, all totally without formal instruction. And yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm not going to turn down lessons for them. In fact, I kind of dream of going to music school at some point. The last point I want to make, and something that I think most of us can agree on, is that regardless of what it looks like, a musical community is one of the most meaningful things that you might find in your journey with music. That's something that I might even be able to unilaterally encourage. Find your people, whether it's through mentorship and being taught, or just through collaboration and peer feedback. There's a good chance you'll grow your musical skills and make connections that inspire you.
Alright, very nice. That part was the most solid in the last one, so the improvements, they're not going to be as dramatic here. It still sounded very nice, it was very good. Smooth, connected, all that. One main difference, the ornament did not happen twice, and the ornament, when it did happen, it felt much more subtle. So it seems like you took my advice, playing it as written the first time, second time, add in a little bit of flair. I think it's a good way to go about it. It's just too much. I don't care what genre of music it is, when you hear the same thing just twice in a row, it loses its luster really fast. You gotta keep doing new stuff, and I found that to be much more effective. Let's talk about that retard at the end. You played that A minor chord, and then you slow down a lot when you played that low E, and I'll actually pull up the sheet music here. And then you kind of rush through the chord a bit. Of course you can do whatever you want, but something that I would be able to do if you want to have like total control of this music is be able to gradually slow down. I heard something kind of like this. like it just kind of rushed through that E major chord, and I would just keep that gradual slowdown going. And you can even try hearing that just with the bass line. That's kind of how I feel like it should be. Ultimately, it's all sounding a lot better, but I would think about measure 7 there with a gradual slowdown finally leading to that A resolution. And that A that you land on finally, it's all about there. And then all this is kind of like the smoke after the final resolution. This is the main thing, and that's just sort of a result of that. So it's
I really appreciate how you put this advice, and it's one of the things I practiced the most over the last week. I think it got a lot better. I also realized that one of the reasons why it was hard for me is because I was trying to mute the E before playing that A. And I'm still doing that. I think practicing it made it more fluid, but I'm not sure if that sequence of micro movements is necessary or the most efficient. Trying to mute the E before then going to the A feels like it creates this little gap, which is, I think, what you were hearing. And I'm still fighting it a little, but it's become a lot smoother just by practicing that one section slowly, medium, fast, and fast over the last week. We'll see how it goes.
all right. Let's go ahead and move on and see how the rest of this is. Alright, nice. So I'm hearing like pushing and pulling with the dissonance and then the resolution of those dissonances in this. Something I would maybe consider, let me actually... And when you play that, that's actually the first time I'm really hearing a pushing and pulling, because it feels like everything leading up to that is just pushing. Like you're not taking any time at all. And I think maybe you could take some time. Just sort of letting it breathe can be a nice idea. And I don't play this, so I'm just kind of reading it, so forgive if I'm like missing notes and stuff. But the way I see this, we have this initial C major. And like you're not gonna give it time like that, but that's the first statement, kind of like if I'm speaking bum 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 da 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 da, just a breath or something, you know. And the new thing, and then when we go back to C major, it's kind of like this oasis, just this peacefulness before things start getting crazy with that whole like circle of fifth section there. So we can lead into it, and then just. There are these moments where you can just take time to let it breathe, and it feels like a lot of what you're playing is just pushing forward, and I think like the actual performance is probably suffering from that too, because it's hard to just keep this continuous motion. I don't even think it sounds better to do that too. Like I think it makes sense to let it just breathe. But I would just try to work out what the ideas are, and then just allowing a little bit of space between them.
This letting it breathe advice that you gave me honestly has been some kind of revelation. This, I think, is the thing that I have felt the most progress in over the last week. I've pretty much only been playing Carcassi 7, and I've been thinking about this concept in particular. You dive into it here and later on in the video too, so I'll let you do the teaching, but I think hearing you play it and also the examples that you play later on, as well as discussing the breaks and pauses between musical phrases, just helped it click in my brain, and the growing comfort in my fingers of playing the piece in total has allowed me to apply that in practice. I feel like I'm glimpsing for the first time, at least in classical, how it feels to breathe musicality into a piece through these conscious musical choices. And wow, it's magical.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that made sense and I'm not just rambling at you.
It's crazy to me that you actually feel like you could just be rambling at me and that it's not making sense. Like, I just feel like I'm downloading heaps of musical knowledge from you right now. And the fact that you even put that in, I'm just like, what? How can you're clearly not just rambling. I don't know.
But just keep in mind that you can treat this music less as like a metronomical like dance number and more of a monologue. And in a monologue, you have a general pace that you're speaking at, but you can take moments, you know, and just a breath. Like you can have these breaths in the music, especially where it makes sense. Like, and same thing with a monologue. Like you wouldn't have a breath somewhere where a breath shouldn't be. Like if you just listen to yourself speak, You hear where the breaths are. This music is like that too. So that's my only point. All right, moving on. All right, nice, really good. So first off, those slurs and the picked notes, those ba-da-da-da-ba-da-da-da, those sound like worlds better than the first time you played it. It sounds like you worked on that quite a bit, and that's really good. Good job on that. I know that you said something in your video earlier on. You can watch his video if you want to hear exactly what he said. I mentioned that that high E that you're playing is kind of the least important part of the music, because it's just a drone, right? Like, the music is... That's the melody. It's not that. It's just something to fill in the gaps. I gave you the advice to just play those softly and to just try to shape this. And you made a point in your video to say that you didn't want to play all of it softly. And as you heard in that, he did a crescendo at the end with the E's, and I found it very effective. Let's listen to that again. Yeah, it's a cool effect, and I'm not the one who suggested that you do that. You came up with that on your own. And that is sort of the beauty of a guitar lesson, I think. It's not necessarily just following everything your teacher tells you to do, especially when it comes to decisions like that, like musical decisions. The purpose of the lesson is more to just call attention to something that I don't think that you are thinking about as much as you should be. Now, when I hear that, it sounds like a lot of thought went into that. And even though it might be different from what I said, or like maybe how I would play it, but I recognize that you're not just slapping notes around and you're making a musical decision. And that decision is unique to you. You came up with that. So in a guitar lesson, should you feel bad about not following every little detail your teacher tells you? No, like a lot of this stuff I'm just coming up with on the whim, but I'm just recognizing these things that seem the most ill-considered, and I'm telling you that, and now you're considering them more. It's a wonderful thing, and that's why when you have a piece of music at this level where you've been playing it for a while, you have it fully memorized, you can perform through it, you're playing it like a couple months goes by and it doesn't really improve at all, that is the time to get a guitar lesson, because a teacher will point out everything that seems ill-considered, and now you have a checklist of like 5 things that you can make the most considered part, and it'll elevate the entire performance beyond what it ever could be without that one guitar lesson. So that's a really good way to go about guitar lessons if you can't afford them. For example, if you can only get like a couple a year, just prepare a bunch of music, and I guarantee you any guitar teacher will be down to help you, and they'll probably even run over lesson time. I'm not going to promise that, of course, you know, their time is valuable, but that's like the most fun thing to do as a guitar teacher, when somebody has a bunch of work already done and you're just finding the things that they maybe missed, and then they come back like months later and it's like, wow, this is like so much better. As far as value and lessons go, this is the peak right here. All right, moving on.
Just to briefly comment on this, it's something that I've been finding over the last year of taking guitar lessons again. From the student perspective, this is also spot on. It's really tempting to want to just go into a lesson and be like, tell me what to do, how do I get better? But I found that all the lessons that have been most fruitful for me are where I've been practicing a ton, or where I have a specific piece or a specific song, something that I can play decently that I bring to a guitar teacher, and then they listen to me play and they teach me through that piece. They help me develop it more. We talk about concepts that relate to what I'm inspired by and what I'm exploring.
Ah, then we have the original ornament there. Okay. And you save it for the end. And you know what? It's kind of welcome. Like, it was fun to hear that ornament one time, and I heard other variations of that ornament in other places, but it was different. Like, it sounded like you played a G natural there. And that's what makes it fun for me to listen to, because I know that thought went behind this. Like, when you're just playing notes, and it's just what comes naturally, and you're just kind of piddling through it, like, I don't really enjoy listening to something like that. But this whole performance so far, every phrase, there has been something interesting that I didn't hear the last time I heard it performed. That's great. All right.
I appreciate the glazing, but I will say, now after all this discourse about the ornament and about ornamentation in general, I feel this desire to develop the choices I'm making with this ornament even more. I've learned so much, even just in this short time, regarding melodic choices through this one simple thing. And I want to think a little more carefully about how I might be choosing ornaments in this piece and in other pieces. That being said, I am a spicy boy, special, spicy. I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to include some type of spice in most pieces that I play, classical or not.
Let's see how this ends. See, again with that retard, ba-da-dee-da, da-da-da-da-da, I would really practice making it a gradual da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum instead of ba-dee-da-dee-da, da-da-dee-dum. It's just kind of jarring. I wouldn't do that. Practice the smooth, gradual slowdown. And that circle of fifth section, the how the piece ends, like I said last time, that's your least familiar spot, because of course it is. It's the ending of the piece. Sounds way better now. And in fact, I actually like how you played this one more than the first one, because the first one you know way better and you feel comfortable pushing through it and rushing. But I really felt this sense of like phrasing when you played this last part. So I would say do that for the first time too. Like just let it breathe a little bit. You don't have to constantly but you can go like almost like you need to take a breath, you know. All right, let's hear the ending. All right, let's talk about that ending a little bit. This piece is so full of energy because it's a perpetual motion, kind of fast, shreddy piece. Like, that's how it kind of is. And this ending is kind of the moment that it all stops. And with it being the final, like, resting place of the piece, that vibrato had more energy than, like, anything I heard in that piece. It was like... That is not a restful way to end this. How I would do it is just some kind of... and then just let it kind of sing. So the main things I want to say...
Thank you for commenting on that. That last performance, before I got all the positive feedback, I actually was a little frustrated with it. And most of it had to do with the two ending vibrato notes that just felt like it was too much and not enough. This was perfect feedback, and I've incorporated it. I hope it'll come across when I play it.
It sounds a lot better to me. It sounds more nuanced. It sounds like you thought a lot more about every part that I talked about, and even other parts too. I think you're playing very breathlessly. You're pushing through and there's no letting up. And I think you could probably just let it breathe a little bit. What I want to do with our last little bit of time here, let's actually hear professionals playing it who actually have learned this piece, because I haven't learned it. I'm not going to play it for you. But I just want to see if we can find these things that I'm talking about, just so we have examples of what it sounds like in this piece in particular. All right, it looks like this guy has the most popular one, so let's see how he sounds.
Bruh.
Between that shredding, there's a lot of nuance going on. The crescendo and diminuendo, and that slowdown between the repeated phrase that you're about to hear again. Like
Diminuendo? What a frickin' word. Cameron goes on to watch several pro players playing this piece. I'd highly recommend you go check out his video that I'm responding to see them play it. Some of the newer choices I've made were influenced by these pro performances that we watch. The last thing I want to say before I play is, once again, Cameron, thank you so much for the cosign and for giving me all of this advice and for giving everyone this advice. I feel like these videos are so instructional and interesting, and a ton of comments have been saying the same thing. And on that note, thank you to everyone who is engaging with this, who is watching, who's leaving me notes and tips. I've been reading through all of the comments on Cameron's videos and on mine. There's been so much interesting discourse. I'm having so much fun, and I'm feeling so inspired. And I just freaking love music so freaking much, dude. So yeah, thank you. And with all that being said, here is this week's rendition of Carcassi 7. Whoa, 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 whoa. We'll take it.